Hi everyone, my name's Amanda.
I'm Sahar.
My name is Ilili.
And today we're going to debate the topic of whether or not organic foods are more nutritious than conventionally grown foods and how we believe they are not. Our group has determined that there is not a high difference, and if any, this is why.
The MayoClinic.org states that while studies have shown differences in the food, there is limited information to draw conclusions about how these differences translate into overall health benefits. Studies have shown small to moderate increases in some nutrients in organic produces. Using this information, we concluded that there is no substantial proof or evidence that argue that organic foods provide a higher nutrition content. Stemming off this information, it leads me and my group members to believe that it is unnecessary and a waste of money to pay for foods that might not be contributing to health benefits in the long run. At the end of the day, an apple is an apple, and we can assume that it is going to give the same nutrient content if you consume it, whether or not it is organic. The fact that organic foods might have a slight chance of having a higher nutrient content is a difficult conclusion to make based on current scientific research. And even if it does provide a small quarter of a fraction of an extra nutritional content, it is not going to make a significant difference in one's overall health, because a produce that is an organic food can only have so much more nutrients infused than a conventionally grown food. And you could easily get those nutrients that you may need by eating more of that food than by opting for an organic option that might have more nutrient content.
Researchers at Stanford University evaluated nearly 250 studies comparing the nutrients in organic versus traditional foods like fruits, vegetables, grains, poultry, meat, and eggs, and the health outcomes of eating these foods. The researchers discovered very little difference in nutritional content. Comparisons in the nutritional quality of foods from organic and conventional systems are often complicated by differences in farming practice, soil quality, plant varieties, and the time of harvest. Just because a product is labeled organic does not mean that the content of its nutritional value is higher. Some of these products can still be processed in terms of calories, sugar, salt, and added fats. For example, organic cookies, chips, sodas, and ice cream can all be purchased in supermarkets. Despite being organic, these products are still unhealthy when consumed on a regular basis. Having knowledge of what types of foods are being consumed is overall a necessity in order to maintain a healthy diet. But this is not solely based on whether one is organically or not. In simple terms, when choosing foods in order to meet nutritional values needed throughout the day, there is not an immediate or extreme difference between organic and traditional grown conventional produce.
A widely reported Stanford University study concluded that there is little difference in the healthfulness and safety between conventional and organic foods, which have been criticized by experts in health science fields everywhere. The authors concluded that the studies reviewed do not support what they call widespread perceptions that organic foods are overall nutritionally superior to conventional foods. My rebuttal is, after reviewing and analyzing the study, we have agreed that the information presented by the university, the difference between organically grown and conventionally grown produce, are slim to none in reference to nutritional value. Although studies have confirmed that organic foods tend to have less exposure to different types of bacteria, the nutritional value does not change. Taking this from a personal standpoint, growing up in the projects of New York City, there's no wide range of locally grown markets or stores that provide healthy options, let alone organic products. So there's need to educate oneself in knowing the difference between the two. I'm vegan, which also attributes to the way of finding foods that meet nutritional needs for myself in a lower income area without having to break my bank by spending large sums on organic products that might have the same value as conventionally grown. In the long run, both foods, no matter what product they may be, have exactly the same value in macros and nutrition, and if not, they're very similar. The second half of our group is going to debate on why they think organic products do have a higher nutritional value or change in one's diet as opposed to conventional foods.
Hello, I'm Brendan May.
And I'm Trevor Mello, and our argument is that organic foods are more nutritious than non-organic foods. And for the most part, we found this to be true through scientific, cultural, personal, and emotional evidence. However, at the end of the day, we found that the increase in nutrition may not be as much as most people think, but we did find good evidence that does support that there is more nutrition. Our first piece of evidence comes scientifically, and it shows that farming foods organically boosts the key nutrients in those foods. This evidence comes from a study that examined organic dairy and meat, and this, according to the study, organic dairy and meat contains more fatty acids such as omega-3s, and we think that this increase comes from the cows and other animals going out in the fields and grazing on the grass. Another thing that the study showed was that this organic dairy and meat contains more antioxidants such as vitamin E, which is important because it can potentially protect your body from things like free radicals. Another study we found from the University of Missouri examined oranges and found that organic oranges contain more vitamin E, antioxidants, and nutrients than non-organic oranges.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, not about the vitamin E, but about the USDA stamp. You know, it has to do a lot with how the food is grown and produced. So with the USDA stamp, we know that that outlines that the food was grown without pesticides. We know that it was not genetically modified. We know that it wasn't fertilized with petroleum-based fertilizers or sewage sludge-based fertilizers. And we also know that this stamp doesn't just apply to produce, but to the meat and dairy that we consume as well. Livestock under the USDA organic certification has to have access to the outdoors. So those videos that surface of Purdue chicken farms, and all the chickens are all crammed into each other, and there's not much room for grazing and for moving around. We know that those would not receive a USDA stamp of approval. That chicken would not receive a USDA stamp of approval because of how the chicken was brought up. So it's important, especially for consumers, to be able to have that faith that the food was sourced responsibly.
So as for personal evidence, growing up, my mom would always buy organic foods whenever she wanted to start a new diet or she was in one of her health conscious stages. And I would eat these organic foods, and as I ate them, I made this connection that organic meant healthy, and whether or not this was true, I did feel better. I felt more energetic and overall better. So whether or not I was getting more nutrition, it helped me make better decisions with health, in the topic of health. So it led me to better health conscious decisions in the future.
Yeah, and that's important. It's important for the culture, I think, to be able to have that faith in their supermarkets that the food was sourced responsibly when it has that USDA stamp of approval. The National Organic Program, part of the Agricultural Marketing Service, has the authority to take appropriate legal action to enforce organic standards. So from farm to market around the world, they have 30,000 locations, and their job is to provide the stamp of approval for food that is deserving of it. And food affects our mental and emotional health. from a cultural aspect. So I think that as a culture, it is important to be able to have that full faith in just as simple as something as simple as the USDA stamp of approval.
So overall, whether big or small, we found that there is more nutrition in organic foods than non-organic. By eating organic foods, you expose yourself to more omega-3s and other fatty acids. Another thing that you can get is more antioxidants such as vitamin E, and these are really important. Another thing that we found is by eating organically, you have you're able to boost your motivation to make further health conscious decisions.
Additionally, we found that from an emotional perspective that the food is sourced responsibly and that you, as a consumer, can be ensured that you're receiving those extra nutrients in the USDA organic stamped foods, as well as as from a consumer's perspective, from a cultural perspective, we know that the food was brought up and fed the proper diets outlined by the USDA, so that food that goes into our food was sourced responsibly.